Welcome, everyone. We continue our series entitled League of Women Voters, Empowering You, a program designed by the League of Women Voters in partnership with Dayton Access Television to provide unbiased, nonpartisan information on issues that are relevant to our friends and neighbors throughout the greater Dayton area. My name is David Bodary. I'm a member of the League of Women Voters and your host this evening as we discuss our topic, Empowering You, Updates to Changes in Our Voting Processes. Our guest today is Jeff Rezabek. He is the director of the Montgomery County Board of Elections. And we're just so happy, Jeff, that you're with us today. So thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
What I wanted to do is follow up on what happened last spring when we were initiating the House bill from 2022. That was House Bill 458.
Correct.
And that law passed, took effect in May, and was applied again in August for our elections. And so I was hoping we could kind of talk a little bit about what effect, if any, has that had? What changes maybe do we need to make sure that we're aware of? And that way, hopefully, helping people to participate fully in the upcoming election, November 7th, if I have my dates correct.
Yes.
So let's begin sort of where that process takes us. What, if any, issues came to light, either in the May or maybe the August election, that came out of that House Bill 458?
Well, again, thanks for having us to get on the show and explain a lot of these changes. Because in May, we did have a small turnout, just a little over 10%. But we, thanks to the voters, not only in Montgomery County, around the state, that August special, many people were predicting low numbers. We ended up here in Montgomery County, closer to my prediction, we were over 30%, about 38%. So a lot more voters were out. We could see the effects of 458. Of course, the number one effect on 458, or number one change, was the ID part. The photo ID is what's required, and it has to be a valid driver's license or state ID in the state of, from the state of Ohio. And or you could also use a military ID that was issued by the state of Ohio or issued by the U.S. government. You can also use your passport. The big change was those, but along that line, no use of a utility bill or a form of paycheck or some other type of sheet of paper from the government. It was just focused on those IDs.
So let's make sure that we're clear on that, because sometimes people are used to doing something one way and then they don't realize the change has taken effect. So they can't use a utility bill and they can't use a Social Security card either, right?
That's correct.
But they could use either a driver's license issued by the state or a state ID, again, issued by the state, a military ID that would be current, active, issued either by the state or by the, I suppose, federal government.
Correct.
Did I miss anything?
Yeah, no, you hit it exactly. We do have some military or some veteran IDs that were issued by the county recorder's office. We do not accept those because they have to be issued by the state of Ohio.
By the state. Okay, so important to remember that and recognize it's issued by the state would be an important qualifier there.
Absolutely, it has to be issued by the state of Ohio. We did have every once in a while a couple of, whether they're college kids or people who are just coming into the state, they still need to get a state ID or a state driver's license issued by the state of Ohio.
Oh, so that's interesting. I didn't think about that. So if a student is at Sinclair, Wright State, UD, but maybe they've transferred in from another state, so they're coming here for that school, they may either vote in their home state using the processes appropriate to that state, or they would need to get a valid ID.
Yes, they can register if they're from one of those schools and they want to register in Ohio, they would have to register. But to actually vote, they need a state ID or a state driver's license that is from here.
Yeah. Well, we're talking about registration. Why don't you remind us about the registration process? Because we have an election coming up in November. I presume that registration must be completed a month prior to that?
Yes, our deadline to register for the November 7th election is October 10th. So all of that's got to get in. It is really easy. If you have a driver's license already, you can, and you're a first-time person in the state of Ohio, you can still register online. Or you can do the old paper thing and fill it out in paper and send it to the office, or bring it to the office, which is the administration building downtown. and then we'll just process it. You have to make sure you have your driver's license number or your last four of your social, an address, of course, here in Montgomery County, or in the county that you're going to be registering in,
Right.
As well as your birth date, and sign that form. You get it into us. You are then registered, and you'll get a confirmation, and that confirmation will have what your precinct is and where your voting location is.
Good.
You also have the opportunity in that process, if you miss something, we will send you letters and ask you for, if you happen to not sign it, we'll say, hey, you got to come in and sign it or fill out a new one. Please make sure you sign it. Or if you missed a number like a birth date or your last four of your social, we'll get that information
So
from
if
you.
for some reason something doesn't add up, it doesn't just get tossed, it's followed up with, and so people would have an opportunity to get that corrected.
Absolutely. My staff not only will write you, if you do provide a number on that form, we actually call all these numbers to reach out to those voters to get them quickly registered, especially when we get close to that deadline.
Right. So let me just make sure that I'm clear. You could come to the county office, which is located right there on 3rd Street.
Yeah.
But could you also do a registration at the Bureau of Motor Vehicles?
Yeah, there are a number of locations that you can do it at the Bureau of Motor Vehicles. Many of the times they'll ask you as you're filling it out and getting that, do you want to be registered? If you say yes to them and you, of course, sign that, it actually gets electronically sent to us, and we send out a confirmation to make sure it was you that wanted to register. You can drop off those registration forms at a number of locations, Job and Family Services, local libraries. There are many locations that you can do that.
Right.
Additionally, if you are downtown and you're dropping it off, I said you can do it through the mail. You can also, we have a drop box outside our office, just behind the building on Vista View. You can just pull in real quick, jump out, put that in our box, and it's an easy way to get it, to make sure we get in our office.
And of course, the League of Women Voters is also active in helping people to become registered to vote as well.
Absolutely. The League of Women Voters and many other organizations, especially when we have hot topics like the new issue 1 and new issue 2, as well as upcoming, you have a presidential primary year coming in March 19th.
Sure.
And then, of course, 2024 in November is the big one that we all try and gear for as the presidential year goes on.
I was thinking about that from the perspective of the Board of Elections. Like, do you look forward to that? I mean, you're like anxiously await. You hope everything's going to be okay.
We've been processing and working on what we call our Super Bowl. We've been working on it already for a year to make sure that we are ready to take on any challenges that may be for us, but more importantly, that we provide the best experience for the voters, whether they want to come in and early vote, they want to vote by absentee mail, or they want to vote on Election Day.
Right. And we'll get to that, I hope, a little bit more in a minute. But I wanted to just touch on this idea of the voter law changes and then the spring and then August elections. As you learn some things from that, is there anything that you can point out that, boy, we didn't expect, or anything that came to light that maybe would be helpful for people that will be voting in November to be aware of?
Absolutely. There are a number of lessons learned, as we like to call them. One of the big ones, and we saw it mostly in the northern part of the state, although we did have a number of them. We were seeing, we didn't see too many in May because it was a smaller election, of course. But in August, we saw an uptick in people who they came in with their ID, but many of them didn't realize that their driver's license or their regular state ID had expired. Most people should know, and I have an experience with this because I did forget on my birthday, forgot that the driver's license expired that particular year. A nice officer who had pulled me over pointed out that my license had expired, so I quickly went down to the administration building. This is a number of years ago. I went down to the administration building, got my new ID as valid, and actually went down and voted in person that particular day.
Wow.
Years before I was going to be director, but we are now encouraging people to make sure that they, of course, should know when your birthday is. double check your driver's license expires every 4 years from when you get it, that birthday.
And it's not your birthday month, it's the day of your birth.
It's the day of your birthday.
So if the election is early in the month and your birthday is later, you would be okay.
Right, especially, if you have a November early, the first week and a half of November, you're going to be our tricky ones.
Yeah.
But we do have people who have had a birthday and didn't get their driver's license renewed for like a month, come to vote. They will be able to vote and fill out a provisional ballot. All they have to do is then get their ID and then come down and in this time period, what we call the curing time period, which is 4 days after the election, come down and actually show us the ID that's valid, that it's you, and then that ballot, as long as everything else is good, will be accepted and counted. And one of the big things that we saw, a lesson learned, those 4 days that we've had longer days, but they shortened it up just to try and make sure we're getting all the votes counted as quickly as possible. We would go into that weekend. We're required to be open a number of days. Of course, we go into that Saturday. The people who have a lot more experience at our office, who've been there for years and decades, had never seen anybody come in on a Saturday or Sunday. However, in August, we had a number of people who had invalid IDs because of their expired ID who came in on Saturday showing us that. So a lot of our voters are looking at the law, following it, and actually using it, which makes us excited that in those 4 days, we were able to cure a number of those provisional ballots that wouldn't have counted otherwise, but the voters were excited to vote. We were excited to make sure that their ballot counted, and we were very successful, so the law did work. And as I've tried to say to many of the people in discussions around the state, we also did a public service. That voter now has a valid ID, a valid driver's license, and they won't get ticketed if they were happen to be pulled over with an invalid license.
Right. So just to be clear, in terms of a provisional ballot, I think sometimes people think, oh, what does that mean? Provisional simply means that we're going to have you vote, and then we're going to confirm that you can provide the valid identification required in order to count that vote. So it's, in a sense, it's a vote that will count as soon as you come down to the Board of Elections and confirm that, oh yes, I am a valid voter. Here's the proper ID that I was unable to provide on Election Day or previously.
Absolutely, that is one of the reasons for the provisional ballot, that if you have something that's not valid, like the ID. But a provisional ballot also can be used if you moved from, let's say, Columbus to Dayton a couple weeks before. Of course, we can't get you registered and all that or change that. You're still able to vote as long as you're voting in the right polling location, the right precinct. It'll still go into a provisional ballot. All we have to do is confirm that you're a registered voter in the state of Ohio.
Okay.
And that's one of the other things that if you don't need, we have a lot of times people call in and say, I got to register. If you're already registered in the state of Ohio, you can call and confirm that you're registered or look online, but you don't have to re-register for every election. The only time you, quote, need to re-register is if you've moved. Mm-hmm. That's your biggest thing. Or if you have a name change, and that happens to a lot of the women voters who get married or something like that, or it could happen on a divorce side. Sure. That they change their last name. We want to make sure we're as accurate as possible.
Right, that makes sense. And that business of a curing period, a cure is not a term that many of us think about, but 4 days are now allowed.
Correct.
And so that would mean after election on Tuesday, mm-hmm. Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. What are the hours that you would then be open on a Saturday?
8 to 5.
Okay, so business hours mm-hmm. on a Saturday, really leaving people 4 days, including some weekend time, to be able to kind of come and provide that evidence or valid ID.
Absolutely. And our offices are always open, or give us a call if at the polling location you don't remember the instructions, because we give you a sheet of paper. Always call the Board of Elections and we'll assist you and make sure your ballot counts.
I don't expect you to know off the top of your head, but I'm curious to know the numbers of provisional ballots that might have been cast in our county, or whether that was normal or within the range of what is normal compared to other years. Do you have any sense of that?
You want to know August's?
I mean, do you really know
We
it?
had roughly about 1,800 provisional ballots in August.
Okay.
And out of those, you end up having roughly 200 or so that are not accepted for various reasons. Some of them are fairly simple that we stress to our poll workers and the voters on the provisional form. It's a big envelope, and it's highlighted in yellow what needs to be filled out. Simply like we try and train our poll workers, but we're asking the voters to also be mindful when it asks for your birth date. Your birth date is not the day of the election.
Right.
And so sometimes you have that kind of thing. Simple things that we have really turned around. Years ago, they would have somewhere they didn't sign the provisional form, the ballot, the envelope. We have almost knocked that out. We didn't have. I think we had one that didn't sign the provisional. We had tried to reach out to that individual.
And so you do that via the training that you provide through the poll workers themselves.
Yeah, our poll workers go through a series of training and videos, and we also require them to come down to do hands-on training as well with the equipment.
Good. So 1,800, would you say that that's average, or do you think that there was a little blip up in terms of the number of provisional ballots because of the law change, is what I'm thinking?
Because of the high turnout that we had, and most people say, well, 38% in the county. Well, for an August, if you look back at last year's August when we barely made 5%, it's an extremely great year, and that's all credit to the voters who saw an issue and came out and voted. But I would say that is maybe a slightly up a little bit, and that because of those expired IDs, we're trying to do that. One thing I failed to mention about those expired IDs, we did see some of them with some elderly people who are no longer driving. They still kept their ID. We want to encourage them or their family members to get a state ID and just keep that current. They don't need to have a driver's license if you choose not to. Just go and get the free state ID, and you'll be good to go to make sure you're voting.
No, that's really an important point, and I certainly think about it too. My family, my dad and mom, although they live out of state, are certainly to the point where they're not driving, and so they're not worried about having a driver's license, but there are other reasons that they may need to have an ID. So to have a state ID becomes an important option at that point. A good reminder. I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you.
So, all right, any other observations, maybe any other indications that the state law change is being understood, or perhaps in some instances maybe is not well understood?
A lot of the things that happen more internally, one of the things are on those provisionals, we have less time to really look at those provisionals. So my staff is really working hard. They have 8 days to kind of verify, and that we're continuing to work on that. That has been something that has been a slight change, so we've had to change some of our hours. Also to encourage from 458, please have the voters look at our website or call us to make sure they know the voting hours for this upcoming election. Of course, the first 3 weeks, we have you 8 to 5 at the downtown administration building, 451 West 3rd Street. Free parking in the parking garage right there off of 2nd Street. You come right in. As long as you got your ID, we'll give you a parking pass and you'll be good to go. That last week does change. It goes from 7:30 to 7:30 on that Monday. It goes to 8:30 on that Tuesday because that last Tuesday before Election Day is the last day you can file or make a request for an absentee ballot. Okay, so that our office hours are open, so the voting hours are open, and the rest of the week is that 7:30 to 7:30. And of course, we have one final weekend, 8 to 4, and then 1 to 5 on that Sunday. But also, with the change, we have no voting on Monday. There's no voting anywhere in the county or in the state on that Monday. That's us to prepare for Tuesday's election. We did have a number of people come in, so what we did, as again, lesson learned, we put more signs out as best we could to make sure. We also did, because of many of the topics that are coming or the issues that are out there, they are people are energetic about those and want to cheer their side on. We did do some additional changes in the parking garage and gave the voters more space between those that are campaigning and coming in. So it's not so much just a gauntlet to get through. We got you much more space, and I got to thank the campaigners. We only had one incident, but the regular campaigners that were down there, and I'll say regular ones that I saw most of those days, did a great job, and they got their issues out. But they were very respectful to my team, but also, and more importantly, respectful to the voters.
Absolutely. And in fact, I was one of those campaigners at one time, support of a levy issue. And so I definitely sat at the table or stood at the table and answered questions, but also tried just to be helpful. What I loved about the Board of Elections building, you park for free, and then you follow the footprints or the trail, and it's very clearly marked exactly where to go, both to get in and then as you leave, how to get back to your car. So
absolutely, follow the blue line in all the way down to the lower level, go right in to vote, follow the red line out to exit the building, and we do it. We were doing on that final Sunday, this past Sunday. I mean, we were doing 2,000 to 3,000 people. And so that's why we knew the numbers were going to be very good this August. So we do anticipate that there'll be more voters.
Oh, for sure.
For November, there's a lot of issues out there. You have a constitutional amendment on issue 1. You have a state statute on issue 2. And of course, all the local levies, any other issues. Some cities have some charter issues. I encourage you to, when you come, make sure you get a background and read up on everything. Like, we want you to be an educated voter, but that also helps speed the process when you go to vote. You already know the issues or candidates. But I also encourage you that if you want to take time, we always encourage you to do the absentee. You can sit right at home, sit at your kitchen table, work with your family members if you want to, or do it by yourself. But you also can get online and look at all the issues and search the candidates. So we always encourage that. That just helps out. And of course, Election Day, of course, is always busy. All you have to do is make sure you know where your polling location is. There's a couple things you can get online and check with your name on our website. You can call our office, or if you happen to go to a polling location and it appears to be closed, if we did switch them, there'll be a QR code, and you just scan that with your phone, put in your name, and it'll give you the directions right to your polling location.
Okay. So good chance for us to remember there are different ways that a person can vote. So we can vote early.
Yes.
You can vote absentee. So you can vote early in person at the County Board of Elections building, and that's where you park for free, and you make sure to check the hours before you come, but you can check the hours on the website. Remind us of the website address.
The website is www.mcsafevoting.com.
mcsafevoting.com.
Correct.
And that'll help to provide the hours of operation, which weeks, weekdays, week evenings, or weekends, early voting is available.
Yep.
So I know that you've shared a lot of dates and times, and I suspect that not everybody's able to follow that, but the website will provide that, and that's a great way to remember.
Absolutely, and if you put on, like, look up a voter, you put your name in, not only, and you can see your voting record and all that, how many times you voted, but in an election time frame, you can go over once, we don't have it today, but once the ballot has been approved, you'll be able to go and see your sample ballot well before you come, and you can print that out. It'll say sample on it, of course, but you can print that out and go over it with yourself.
And that helps a lot when you're trying to think through, what does this issue mean, and how do I decide I want to vote? So obviously the early vote is one option, the voting absentee, where I would mail in, and this is an option that my wife often uses because she travels a lot, and so she would be able to get that absentee ballot mailed to her house, and then she has plenty of time to then complete it, fill it in, sign it, and then make sure that she places it back in the envelope, and within the appropriate amount of time, get that mailed back.
Yes, and I'm glad you said about the appropriate amount of time. We do encourage you, we know there's a lot of issues out there, but we do encourage you, once you receive your absentee ballot itself, please fill it out as soon as possible. We don't want you to forget, but it needs to be postmarked the day before the election. So in this particular case, it's November 6th. And we have to receive it. That's one of the other changes by 4 days after the election. So we have to receive it by that Saturday, which, just to let everybody know, we do 2 extra runs on Saturday to grab every potential ballot that they have at the post office. Right. But I'll tell you, you do see a huge drop off that after that Wednesday, it's almost, they kind of trickle in. But I will have to give credit to the voters that did early voting in August, because we had 88% of those ballots back by Election Day.
Oh, wow.
So it was
So
great.
they weren't waiting.
They weren't waiting. You don't need to wait. However, if you do have your ballot past midnight, or you don't get the postmark on it on November 6th.
Correct.
And you still have your ballot, you have a couple choices. One, fill out the ballot and drop it off at our drop box. That has to be done by 7:30 on Election Day. After 7:30, it won't count.
Okay.
Or you do have the opportunity to go to your polling location. You'll do a provisional ballot.
Right.
And that provisional ballot will count, because all we have to do is verify that you already haven't voted, and it's in there. You may have the ballot in your hand. The Board of Election, the polling location, will not accept the ballot there, so you can't do that. So.
Right. But by confirming that your provisional ballot counts, since you did not submit the absentee ballot.
Sure.
So
that's
perfect.
absolutely right.
I know it's a lot of work, and I know that it's hard to sort of manage all of the juggling that's going on. Your staff is amazing. Some of them I know, so I certainly appreciate the work that they're doing too. Trying to think of what, if anything, I've forgotten to ask. Is there anything else that we should
Just
talk
one
about?
thing as we were talking, as you were wrapping up there, is polling locations. We have really gone back to I know some people had some changing in the polling locations in August because some of those facilities were just not available. So you'll get another card to making sure that your precinct has gone back to its original.
Okay.
There are, Huber Heights does have one change. Most of the other polling locations are back to their original ones. But if you don't get a postcard and you want to double check, just get online, check our website, or give us a call, and that phone number is 937-225-5656, and we'll do everything we can to make sure you're at the right polling location.
I appreciate that so much. I am going to wrap things up. I just want to remind people that democracy requires us to be active and engaged, not to be passive bystanders. This isn't like Monday Night Football, a spectator sport. It starts by becoming a registered voter and then continues as we educate ourselves to vote, and then relies on our active participation in each election. Not just once, but every election. So there's lots of work that still needs to be done as we continue to be active, working to create a more perfect union. I appreciate, Jeff, your staff's efforts, your efforts to make sure that we can make this better and better each time. As we close then, I just want to thank our guest, Jeff Rezabek, Director of the Montgomery County Board of Elections, and to thank the viewers for participating and hopefully learning a little bit, reminding ourselves of what is going on in terms of the voter law changes. The League of Women Voters encourages everyone to participate in every election. If you have any further questions about this or other programming, you can contact the League by emailing league@lwvdayton.org. That's league@lwvdayton.org. Or calling the office. The number there is 937-228-4041. I want to thank you for sharing your time with us. And Jeff, thank you again.
And thank you to you and the staff here. It's been wonderful.
Great.